to apply late penalties. So please turn it in, okay? Okay, now let's get to what I was going to talk about, inflation. Well, I don't want this one. Let's make you go away. All right, let's see. Okay, now let's go here. Let's see. All right, beautiful people. Can you see this slide about inflation? Okay, all right. All right, I'm going to assume you can see it. Somebody say yes, Nunes, we can see it in the chat or unmute. We good? Okay, thank you. Okay, you can see it. Okay, all right. So I want to spend some time. And by the way, it's so much more fun talking about this stuff live, where we can share examples and so forth and ask questions more easily. So I apologize for the format. But anyway, so inflation is an increase in the average money price of goods. That's one way to derive it. Another way to say, look, inflation is basically results in diminishing power of a dollar. So in other words, as prices go up, the value of a dollar becomes less. And here's some interesting factors at play and so forth. I looked yesterday, my wife wanted me to buy some dried black beans. You know, she's Brazilian, they use a lot of beans and rice. And she wanted me to buy some black beans from Amazon. I went on there and first of all, I would have had to wait till early May to receive them. And second of all, the price for, I think, 10 pounds of black beans, dried black beans, would have been $60. We're used to paying about $1.50, $1.60 for a pound. This was like $6 a pound. This is just one example. And hand sanitizer, like a little bottle, like a little 3-4 ounce bottle, was like $7, and then it was like $6 for shipping. So this is what's going on here. All those factors that and you guys did a good job. Some of the quizzes I looked at, listing them and so forth. These expectations of future prices, for one thing, are causing people to panic, and it's creating shortages in the marketplace. Suppliers weren't able to fill the void quickly enough and so forth. And then, of course, their material prices have gone up. And then some suppliers have left the market because of COVID-19 and scares their employees, fear for their employees and so forth, health. And so there's less suppliers, and that's driven prices up, on both the supply and the demand. So less people are making stuff and more people are demanding stuff, especially staples and so forth. Like when we see things like shortages on toilet paper and water. I mean, going to Meijer or to Costco and so forth, and they're out of water or out of toilet paper, out of paper towels. We went there on a Sunday when the toilet paper got restocked. They limited to one case per family, which I think is wise with the hoarding that's going on. And the line was backed up from the cash registers all the way back to where the dog food and the paper towels and stuff are housed at the end of the stores. It was crazy. So anyway, yeah, that's a real example of asking to get the coronavirus. So we just bounced, and I think went to Meijer instead. So there's a lot of factors that are causing prices to change at such an enormous rate right now. This is interesting. One of the strongest inflationary forces, in fact, probably the strongest inflationary force over the last 20 years or so, has been on the price of energy. There's very few substitutes for gasoline. You know, electric cars haven't really hit a critical mass yet to where that's disrupted demand for gasoline, and there's not a lot of substitutes for it. So suppliers of gasoline have been able to charge pretty much what they want to for that product and so forth. That's an example to kind of move on. You know, to talk about price elasticity of demand. Basically, when a product, elasticity just measures sensitivity to price changes. When there's a lot of substitutes and so forth, we're pretty sensitive to price changes. So in other words, if I can buy, like Olivia put something about ice cream, if I know if the price of ice cream went up, I can go to another store and maybe buy ice cream cheaper, okay? Because there's plenty of substitutes. But if there's not a lot of substitutes, or I can switch and get another type of dessert and so forth. But with something like energy and so forth, there's not a lot of substitutes. So in that case and so forth, that's an example of basically inelastic demand, where basically people, since there's not available substitutes, people are more inclined and so forth to you know, their consumption patterns do not change that much if prices change. They're insensitive to price changes. Here's the thing that's interesting in our world, particularly up until recent times. Water is an example of a product and so forth that's you know, has high price sensitivity. So, high price sensitivity, because basically we have substitutes. If the price of bottled water goes up, we can switch to another competitor of bottled water. If Dasani goes up, or Aquafina, we can switch to Mountain Spring or Ice Mountain, or another brand of water. But it's interesting in places where we have water at the wazoo. We have so much water. It's interesting. We have potable water that people can drink that we flush down the commode every day and so forth. For 1/7 of our world, or about 1 billion or 1.2 billion people, there's water shortages. So for them, it's a situation where basically they'll pay whatever they need to pay and so forth if it's within their means and so forth, to have access to water. In fact, I probably should have played this song today. Fela Kuti, the basically progenitor of Afrobeat, had a song like water's got no enemy. If you've got water, you have no enemy. Well, you can create enemies if people are fighting to steal your water or whatever. But like, this is an example in some regions in Asia and in Africa and so forth, there's such a shortage of clean water to drink. A friend of mine that's in the Army Corps of Engineers was asked by a child in Mogadishu. He said, Mr. Benton, is it true that you have so much clean water in the United States that you flush it down the commode? You know, there's an example of surplus or whatever. So anyway, to kind of put a handle on this and so forth, price elasticity demand measures the level of consumer sensitivity to price changes. So when prices change, how are consumer behavior is affected? So I like the world. In fact, I wish that instead of using elasticity, which is kind of a word that's confusing, I wish they would use the word price sensitivity of demand. I want you to think about sensitivity when we think about it. So in general, if the change in quantity demand is greater than the change in price, okay, if basically the change in quantity demand divided by the change in price is greater than 1, that means demand is elastic, okay? Basically, people are sensitive to price changes. So in other words, quantity demanded is highly affected by price changes. That's an example of a sensitive price change, okay? Example of that would be like brands of bread, brands of pasta sauce, brands of pasta, you know, items where there's plenty of substitutes available to us, where we may switch to another brand or we may switch to another product altogether. Okay, there's high sensitivity because there's high substitutability for that product. On the other hand, if consumers are not very sensitive to changes, a change in price and so forth, you know, a change in price and so forth, it results in basically the quantity demand is change in quantity demand is less than the change in price. So if we were to assess a percentage change in quantity demand divided by the percentage change of price, it's less than 1. In these situations, businesses know this. If they know that people have inelastic demand and so forth, they're more likely to increase their prices, because they know that even if people buy less of it, they're still going to make more revenue. So this is an example of what we see now with certain product categories that had elastic demand prior to this crisis and so forth. Certain things like staples, staple goods, and so not staples as like staples that you put in a stapler, but toilet paper, paper towels, water, meat. The price elasticity or sensitivity has become more inelastic. But the thing that's interesting is, since less people are driving, since less people are working, a product that's traditionally very inelastic, gasoline, has become more elastic, and the price of gas as a result has dropped, because basically people are not driving as much. In fact, since people aren't driving as much, American Family Insurance and Allstate Insurance both made a decision to issue refunds to their drivers and so forth. I think I'm getting a refund from American Family Insurance, who took over for Ameriprise, of $100 on my premiums this month, because basically they're having less claims and so forth because people are not driving as much. So you can imagine that downward pressure on demand and so forth has caused to stimulate demand and so forth for gas. Suppliers have cut prices. So it's interesting. So make sure you understand those concepts. I'll go over this some more and so forth. Basically, there's some examples here and so forth. Make sure you look at this video and so forth on price elasticity demand. Pick up at about 3 minutes and 25 seconds in the video. And what I would say is on next week's quiz, make sure you know what inflation is and give me an example of inflation. And then make sure you know basic concepts about price elasticity of demand, and that can give you an example about a product that's in today's world and so forth, post coronavirus, a product that's very price insensitive or price inelastic, and a product that's very price sensitive. And Lord have mercy, our time is already over. I'll talk a little bit about price sensitivity of supply and so forth. That's all more about opportunity cost and substitutability on Tuesday. God bless you guys. Have a great rest of the week. Love you all, and stay safe and healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Papa.
Bye-bye, buddy.